The Ethran Empire maintained strict protocols around their queen. Royal law, unchanged for centuries, was absolute. No subject could speak directly to Queen Solara without formal invitation delivered through proper channels. No one could address her without elaborate ritual. No one could meet her eyes. No one could presume familiarity. And absolutely no one, especially not an outsider, especially not a human, could initiate conversation with her under any circumstances. Violation meant execution. No exceptions. No appeals. Human cultural liaison Daniel Hayes had been briefed extensively on these rules before arriving on the Ethran homeworld. His job was simple. Document Ethran cultural practices, advise Earth's diplomatic corps, and above all, stay invisible. Don't draw attention. Don't violate protocol. Don't give them any reason to notice you exist. Daniel had been following those rules perfectly for 3 months. He kept his head down, conducted his research through proper channels, and made absolutely certain he never found himself anywhere near the royal palace's inner chambers where the queen resided. So when his quarters door opened at midnight and Queen Solara herself walked in, alone, without guards, without announcement, Daniel's first coherent thought was that he was about to die for a crime he hadn't even committed. He scrambled out of bed, dropping to his knees in the formal prostration his briefing materials had described as mandatory in the Queen's presence, his heart pounding with terror. "Your Majesty, I don't know why you're here, but I swear I didn't. I haven't violated any protocols. I don't know what I did wrong." "Be silent," Solara said, her voice carrying absolute authority. Daniel went silent immediately, his face pressed to the floor, waiting for guards to arrive and drag him to whatever passed for Ethran execution chambers. Instead, he heard the door close. Lock. And then impossibly the Queen's voice again, but quieter now, carrying something that almost sounded like nervousness. "You may sit, we need to speak." Daniel slowly raised his head, keeping his eyes downcast as protocol demanded. "Your Majesty, I'm not permitted to speak with you. The law." "I am the law," Solara interrupted, "and I am choosing to break it. Sit." Daniel sat, his back against the bed, still not looking directly at her. His mind was racing. This had to be a test. Some elaborate way to catch him violating protocol so they could justify removing the human presence from their world. Solara moved to the room's single chair, sitting with the perfect posture that probably came from years of royal training. "Do you know why that law exists? Why speaking to the Queen without invitation is forbidden?" To maintain proper respect for your position," Daniel ventured. "To maintain distance," Solara corrected. "To ensure the Queen remains separate, elevated, untouchable. To prevent anyone from seeing her as anything other than the symbol of the empire." She paused. "For 23 years since I inherited the throne, I have been surrounded by people who cannot speak to me freely. Every word addressed to me is filtered through ritual and protocol. Every conversation is calculated for political advantage. No one simply talks to me." Daniel processed this, still uncertain where this was going or how to respond, without triggering his own execution. "I have read your research reports," Solara continued. "The ones you file about Ethran culture. You are observant, thoughtful. You see patterns that even my own advisors miss. And you write with honesty that suggests you believe no one important will read your work." Despite his fear, Daniel felt embarrassment. "Those reports are supposed to be internal Earth documents. I didn't think. I am the Queen. I have access to everything that occurs in my empire, including supposedly internal human communications." She leaned forward slightly. "You wrote that Ethran court protocols create profound isolation for those at the top of the hierarchy, where every interaction is performance rather than genuine connection." "Ah, yes, Your Majesty, I wrote that." "You were correct," Solara said quietly. "And I want to know, what does a human see when he looks at a queen? Not as a ruler, but as a woman who has spent 2 decades unable to have a single genuine conversation, because everyone is too terrified or calculating to simply be honest with me. Daniel finally looked up, meeting her eyes, violating protocol but unable to avoid it when she'd asked such a direct question. Queen Solara was younger than he'd realized, perhaps early 40s in human terms. She wore simple robes rather than formal regalia, and her violet eyes carried exhaustion that no amount of royal composure could fully hide. "I see someone who's lonely," Daniel said honestly, because if he was going to be executed anyway, he might as well tell the truth. "I see someone who has every material comfort and political power, but can't have normal normal etherian connection because your position prevents it." Solara's expression shifted, relief mixed with something that looked like validation. Everyone else would have said, "I see the glorious embodiment of our empire," or some similar flattery. You simply answered honestly. "You asked an honest question," Daniel pointed out. "Seems like honest answers are appropriate." "And that," Solara said, "is why I am here. Because you are the only person in this palace, possibly in this empire, who might actually answer questions honestly instead of telling me what you think I want to hear." Over the following hour, they talked. Not about politics or formal matters, but about the isolation of power, about what it meant to be surrounded by people, but profoundly alone, about the weight of living every moment as a symbol rather than a person. Daniel forgot to be terrified somewhere around the point where Solara admitted she sometimes envied the servants, because at least they could have genuine friendships without every word being analyzed for political implications. When she finally stood to leave, moving toward the door with the same silent grace she'd arrived with, Daniel found himself speaking without thinking. "Your Majesty, you're taking an enormous risk coming here. If anyone found out, then they would be faced with an impossible situation," Solara said. "Punishing me for violating my own law, or accepting that the law itself is flawed. Either way, something would have to change." She looked at him directly. "I will come again, if you are willing to continue these conversations." "You're asking permission," Daniel said, surprised. "I am asking if you consent to breaking the law with me," Solara corrected. "Because make no mistake, what we are doing is forbidden, dangerous, and could have consequences for both of us. But I have not had a genuine conversation in 23 years, and I find I am willing to risk a great deal to continue having them." Over the following weeks, Solara's midnight visits became routine. She would arrive after the palace had settled, stay for an hour or two, and leave before dawn. They talked about everything: philosophy, governance, loneliness, what it meant to be human or etherian, the absurdity of protocols that prevented people from simply being people. Daniel learned that Solara was brilliant, far more intelligent than the ceremonial role of queen required. She had ideas about reforming etherian society, about changing protocols that isolated the powerful, about creating systems where genuine merit mattered more than rigid hierarchy. But she couldn't implement those ideas because the court was filled with nobles who benefited from the current system and who would resist any change that threatened their positions. "You're trapped," Daniel observed during one conversation. "You have absolute power in theory, but in practice, you're constrained by traditions and advisors who control access to you." "Yes," Solara confirmed, "which is why these conversations are valuable beyond mere companionship. You help me see my empire from an outside perspective, without the political calculations that color every observation from my advisors." But rumors were spreading. The palace staff had noticed the queen's unusual movements. Guards whispered about her late-night absences. Nobles began to suspect that something was happening that violated their carefully controlled political structure. Daniel's liaison officer approached him with barely concealed concern. "There are rumors that you have been in contact with the queen. I need you to understand how dangerous that is, even if the contact was initiated by her. You could be executed as a convenient scapegoat if the court decides to act." "I understand the risks," Daniel said carefully, not confirming or denying anything. But he did understand. By treating Solara as an equal, by having genuine conversations with her, by simply listening without calculation or political agenda, he'd become dangerous. Because a queen who had someone treating her as a person rather than a symbol might start questioning why she accepted being a symbol in the first place. When Solara arrived that night, Daniel confronted her. The court knows something is happening. They're getting nervous. You need to stop these visits before you trigger a political crisis. Too late, Solara said calmly. I have already decided. I am going to announce reforms, changes to the protocols that isolate the crown, new systems that allow for genuine merit-based advancement, alterations to laws that prevent honest communication. She looked at him directly. And I am going to cite you as the catalyst. A human who treated me with simple honesty and dignity, demonstrating that the elaborate protocols supposedly required for respect are actually barriers to genuine connection. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Your Majesty, that will make me a target. The nobles who oppose your reforms will see me as the foreign influence corrupting their queen. Yes, Solara acknowledged. Which is why I am also appointing you as royal advisor with full diplomatic protection. They can hate you, but they cannot touch you without creating an interspecies incident. She smiled, genuine warmth rather than formal courtesy. You treated me as an equal when doing so violated every law and protocol. You gave me honest conversation when everyone else gave me calculated performance. That character deserves to be recognized and protected, not hidden in shame. Daniel realized she'd been planning this, using their conversations not just for companionship, but as evidence that the current system was broken, that genuine connection mattered more than rigid protocol. You're using me as a political weapon, he said. I am using our friendship as proof that the old ways need to change, Solara corrected. But I will not do so without your consent. If you want to leave Ethran space, return to Earth, avoid the political firestorm that is coming. I will arrange it with full honors and no consequences. Daniel thought about the lonely woman who'd risked everything to have honest conversations. About the queen trapped by her own crown. About the political reforms that might actually help her people if given a chance. I'll stay, he said. If you're breaking your own laws to try to make things better, the least I can do is stand beside you when the consequences hit. Some connections are formed through careful diplomacy and political calculation. Some through shared experiences and mutual benefit. And some are forged in midnight conversations when a lonely queen breaks her own laws to find someone who will treat her as a person rather than a symbol, proving that the most dangerous thing in any empire is genuine human connection that transcends the barriers power creates. The human who broke the law by speaking with the queen discovered that listening without calculation, treating royalty as an equal, and offering honest conversation could be revolutionary acts. Because when a queen finds someone who sees her as a woman rather than just a crown, the entire empire must confront whether its laws serve